At number 35 John Hammond Street in Accra. We're live too on all our social media platforms at 3FM 927. Also on 3news.com. My name is Noble Crosby Annan. Coming up this afternoon, one person arrested at Gomwa Dominance in connection with attacks on the Potting Polyclinic. Also in the bulletin, two civil society organizations, Imani Africa and the Center for Energy Policy, ASAP, they described the presidential intervention to probe the controversial SML contract as unnecessary. Plus, state funeral held for late Council of State member Enoch Tay Mensah. Much later in the bulletin concerning the rising upper respiratory tract infections in the midst of the Harmattan season, we'll speak to a medical practitioner on what you should be doing to protect yourself. We have details of these stories and a lot more coming shortly. Please stay with us. Welcome to the program. Let's settle for the details of the story of the bulletin. Now, one person has been arrested at Gomwa Dominance in connection to the attacks on the Potting Polyclinic. Youth numbering about 200 allegedly attacked and vandalized the Potting Polyclinic over the death of a relative who was seeking medical care at the facility. There's more in this report.
The death of a 35-year-old man named Ato provoked residents of Gomwa Dominance who attacked the Gomwa Potting Polyclinic, including the workers. Over 200 residents from Gomwa Dominance are said to have taken part in the attack on the facility. They destroyed computers at the OPD and vandalized glass doors, among others. Currently, police officers have taken over the facility to protect lives and property.
And I mean, how many? Oxygen is in his soul, but but not doctor in Niho.
We realized that his breathing had degenerated, but there was no doctor around. It wasn't long after the nurses and doctors came around to change the oxygen. Then he died.
The doctor oxygen is in his soul, in fact, only 5 minutes, no gym.
The medical superintendent of Gomwa Potting Polyclinic, Dr. Jerry Vlad in Kegbe, says the staff are living in danger and has called for police protection.
Hospital government properties.
They have assaulted some nurses and other workers here. Our staff are not in the right frame of mind to work.
Meanwhile, District Chief Executive for Gomwa East, Solomon Dakunkwam, has also called for calm.
The situation is under control. The doctor.
We have controlled the situation and are meeting the youth for calm to prevail.
Well, this is a developing story. Let's speak with Nayao, a man in the central region who is following the story. Nayao, good afternoon to you. Tell us more about the arrest of the individual.
Thank you very much, Kobe, for having me this afternoon. Following yesterday's incident, which occurred at Gomwa Dominance Polyclinic, whereby some nurses were assaulted. Currently, one person has been arrested in connection with what happened yesterday by Gomwa Dominance District Police Command. According to source, the residents from Gomwa Dominance went to the polyclinic yesterday to cause motion there. But some of items belonging to the hospital has been destroyed by the youth. So the person has been arrested, and as we are speaking now, is currently at the police custody at Gomwa Dominance.
Right.
So according to the assemblyman at the area, he said going to take a step. According to the assemblyman, he said he's going to take a step to avoid such occurrences in the nearby future. So I can say,
right, if you can hear me, talk to us about whether calm has been returned to the hospital or not. In interaction with the medical superintendent of the facility, he mentioned that the staff were living in fear.
Currently, calm has been restored at the polyclinic, and as we are speaking now, the nurses are still working. And I think yesterday, the district chief executive deployed some police officers to the polyclinic to protect life and property there. But as we are speaking now, calm has been restored, and I can see that the nurses are still working at the polyclinic.
But they're working with police presence, right?
Yes. Yesterday, there were police presence at the polyclinic, but for now, all the police officers who were deployed by the DCE, they have left the facility, and I think calm has been restored. So there's no police officer there as we are speaking.
Nanayao, thank you so much for your time with us on the program. Nanayao is our Central Regional reporter who brought us details of this development. We'll be keeping an eye on that to bring you subsequent updates in our bulletins. Moving on, in the midst of the Harmattan season characterized by dry and dusty weather conditions, there is a concerning rise in upper respiratory tract infections. Now, these viral illnesses are flourishing in the current environment, posing particular threats to individuals with pre-existing respiratory conditions such as asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. As the Harmattan season blankets regions in dry, dusty conditions, a concerning surge in upper respiratory tract infections has taken center stage. The arid weather characteristic of the Harmattan provides an ideal breeding ground for viruses, paving the way for their proliferation. Let's engage a medical doctor, Dr. Thomas Anaba, who is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Health Policy Research and Analysis. Doc, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. A number of people have been reporting issues with sore throat, catarrh, as we are in the Harmattan season. Indeed, myself, I suffered some a few days ago. Should this be usual or not? And how should people take precautions and manage this?
Good afternoon, Kobe, and good afternoon to your cherished listeners and viewers, if possible. Yeah, I think we are in the season, and it is something that comes annually, that we're having a very cold weather and then very dusty, dry atmosphere. This will lead to certain ailments, which is always routine during the period, but that sometimes will require medical interventions or just simple management at home. However, if you get those symptoms like the cold, the catarrh, which will last you for more than 3 days without any improvement, you need to get to the hospital urgently for a doctor to attend to you. But how to prevent some of these things or minimize the effect of the Harmattan and the dusty weather is to, first of all, the nose mask, which came with COVID-19, is one very good medium one person can use to prevent the amount of dust that you inhale inside, because the mask will serve as a filter to purify the air a little bit better, and then also your breathing in and out will cause some moisture inside the nose mask to make sure your moisture, you regain some moisture in your body. The other thing that we need to do is to take a lot of liquids and hydrate ourselves very well. Because the weather is cold, people tend not to drink water, but the cold weather and the dry atmosphere causes us to dehydrate. In that way, blood is not circulating well, the defense system is not working well. So people need to take a lot of water in their system, a lot of liquid in their system to cause proper hydration, and then the rest. Vitamin C comes in handy to help with those who have chronic lung diseases, and then those who have immune deficiency, so that they can boost up their immunity, because the viruses circulating in the air would rejoice if your immunity is down, so they can easily affect you and you get very, very ill. Sometimes this little cold can lead you to get sinusitis, congestive nasal infection, and the sinuses will get infected. It can lead you to get bronchitis. It goes deep into the lungs and cause a pneumonia, and even sometimes can cause some facial paralysis. We call it herpes zoster, and you get your mouth twitching to one side and then the rest. Your eyelids can become very dry, and your eyes can even be paining you as well. So I think that proper precaution, like I've mentioned, would come in handy, and going early to the hospital to report to doctors of your symptoms that are not improving, or else, especially the elderly and those who have asthma, who have heart problems, you go early to doctors to make sure they examine you to rule out any possibility of developing a pneumonia. The elderly, if they develop pneumonia, it becomes very difficult. They may not have fever, and that will bring a confusion by the time you know it's far advanced. So early reporting to doctors after 3 days of symptoms not improving would be a good thing to do, including all the preventive measures that are put in place. I've told the people already.
Doc, for the vulnerable group, you mentioned the elderly. How about children? How do they go through this weather?
The children, it just keep me, but I think children are also very vulnerable, simply because their nostrils are very tiny. The slightest inflammation in the nostrils and in the throat will cause an obstruction. And their lungs are also small. The smallest dust that may go into the lungs would cause more harm than in an adult. So it is good we keep children clothed very well so that they don't feel the cold. We keep them out of where there's dust. If you have what we call the mist producer, there is some equipment that you put water inside, connected to power. It can generate some moisture in the room, some mist. It makes the room a little bit more moisturized for the children to stay in better. If you have air conditioning that you can use at a higher temperature, close your windows, make sure your curtains are clean all the time, make sure their mattresses and the rest, they are out of dust, and they sleep very comfortably. That will help. And let them drink a lot of liquid. And then if they have fever, temperature, have a cold for more than 3 days, kindly go to a doctor, see a pediatrician to attend to them. Don't auto-medicate antibiotics, because most of the time some of these nasal congestion, catarrh that we get during this time are full of viruses, and that they don't really need antibiotics unless there's a secondary infection with the bacteria. So let's not encourage people to abuse antibiotics at this time, but see a doctor in case your symptoms persist more than 3 days and it's not improving, especially children and then the elderly.
Dr. Anaba, thank you so much for your time with us on the program. Dr. Thomas Anaba is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Health Policy Research and Analysis, speaking with us there. Away from that, the State Funeral Service has been held in Accra for late Council of State member Enoch Tay Mensah. E.T. Mensah died in South Africa on October 1, 2023. He was one of the longest-serving MPs with extensive knowledge and experience before his exit from Parliament in January 2017. Now, glowing tributes have been paid to the late politician and statesman at the State Burial Service held at the forecourt of the State House in Accra. His church and the party that he was a member of for years, the National Democratic Congress, described him as a man of principles.
He was a man who was born to fly like an eagle and naturally flew with eagles. In E.T., the NDC struck gold, a treasure trove that was almost inexhaustible. The man was cut from a different mold from most men. He had passion, he had vision, and he was a perpetual bundle of energy, mental, physical, and intellectual. He was untiring and unrelenting in his pursuit of whatever goals or objectives he set himself. And that passion paved the way to this spectacular success in life. To say that E.T. was successful in his lifetime is only to repeat the obvious, a banal truth that also becomes a boring one. The man was success personified. As a professional accountant, he started from a humble beginning at Snaps College of Accountancy, where he graduated with RSA 2 in 1970. E.T. then rose to become a colossus in the field of accountancy. He was a fellow of the Institute of Financial Accountants in 1986, a fellow of good standing in the Institute of Administrative Accountants, a member of the National Association of Public Accountants.
That was the General Secretary of the NDC, Fifi Kwete there. Well, the late E.T. Mensah entered Parliament as MP for Ningo Prampram in 1997 and exited from the legislature in January 2017. On Thursday, December 21, Member of Parliament for Tamale South, Harun Idrisu, made a statement on the floor of Parliament to eulogize him. He described the late E.T. Mensah as a true and loyal servant.
Late E.T. Mensah entered Parliament as MP for Nigo Pram Pram in 1997 and exited from the legislature in January 2017. E.T. Mensah died in South Africa on October 1, 2023. On Thursday, December 21, Member of Parliament for Tamale South, Haruna Idrisu, made a statement on the floor of Parliament to eulogize him. He described the late E.T. Mensah a true and a loyal servant.
When he was in leadership in Parliament, he sought for consensus building and always reached out to the other side to facilitate the work of the House. Commenting on the business of the House on 13 November 2009, Hansard 726, column 726, he said, "The other time when the shoe was on the other leg, we were making the same noise, but it has come to a time when we need to look at these things in a bipartisan basis. So we take their concerns into consideration." Now, Mr. Speaker, an enduring legacy of his leadership should be as working towards consensus building in this Parliament.
That was a report by my colleague Evelyn Tengma. And Member of Parliament also for Dom Kwabinga, Sarah Dwasafo, has described him as an example for the youth of the country.
He's a test case for all youth in this country. Wherever you are, be there, work hard, learn hard, push harder, and God will be your light and it will shine ahead of you as you rise. Some of us were young when we heard his name and watched him on television do all he had to do in his ability or in his capacity that he served this country.
Adjosafo is Member of Parliament for Dom Kwabinga speaking there. Well, this afternoon, two civil society organizations, Imani Africa and the Center for Energy Policy, are describing as unnecessary the presidential intervention for a probe into the controversial SML contract. The president earlier in the week instructed KPMG to audit the deal, which has been the subject of allegations of malfeasance for 2 weeks, and present a report of its findings. Such a probe, Imani and ASAP argue, should be conducted by an independent statutory agency and Parliament. Executive Director at the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Benjamin Boachi, says the deal has not added any value to the revenue mobilization of the country.
I think what we tried to do was to look at available data and also examine the circumstances around the whole transaction. And we do not see it to be complicated for us to go any longer route in arriving at answering the fundamental question as to whether the services of SML is actually needed or adding value to the state. And looking at the data that is publicly available, we have examined the data from Ministry of Finance, and that data is presented to the ministry by GRA. We have examined the data from NPA. NPA is the authority that hosts the data repository of, downstream product importation, consumption, and the rest of it. So if you look at that data and you look at the performance of the industry over the period, there is nothing that shows that there has been an additional value created.
Well, Benjamin Boachi added that the president should ratify having directing state agencies look into the matter to ensure persons who may be found culpable are dealt with.
The audit is what we have done for them. If you look at the paper, we have actually looked at the data. We looked at SML's data. We looked at GRA's data. We looked at NPA's data. And these are all data that are available to the government. So I don't see why there's that complication of audit, to make it look like something coming from the astronauts. It's not. It's a straightforward matter of looking at the data that is available, what actually is used to account for product, consumption in Ghana. And you will know from that data that GRA is presented to the Ministry of Finance that the claims that they make themselves are not accurate, and therefore they have only been trying to protect the deal and not the interest of the public. And that data is available. I mean, if you look at the ESLA data, it's published by the Ministry of Finance itself. So why are we going to KPMG to come and answer questions or look at the data for us? which I mean, to my mind, there are various capacities in government, in the ministries, various departments in the country that can actually do justice to this. From what we sit and what we think, perhaps what we need to do is really to establish whether through this transaction, some people could be found culpable of undermining the interest of the state. And that's a criminal matter. And KPMG doesn't have capacity to look into those matters. And the way to do it is to get established institutions to do an independent contract came into being. Who sanctioned it? What was the data that informed the need for that contract? And what were rules around these contracts? Were they tight enough? Did the people put Ghana first? Were they mindful of the implications if it turned out not to be what they actually suspected or wanted to achieve? What was the exit rules around it? These are things that an investigative body who could sanction those who went into those contracts will need to get into, and not an audit firm. But they don't have that capacity to do that.
You have the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Benjamin Boache, speaking about the joint statement his outfit released with Imani on the presidential intervention to probe the controversial SML contract, which they describe as unnecessary. Moving on, the Eastern Regional MPP Chairman, Jeffrey Kunedo, has cautioned aspirants in the region to be decorous in speech, especially against certain members of parliament, or face disciplinary actions. One aspirant in the Oda constituency has had his vetting process on hold, awaiting the committee's judgment. The MPP regional chairman, Kunedo, briefed the media after the second day of vetting. He said offensive language against contenders has the tendency to affect the party's chances.
Because we want each and every aspiring candidate to be mindful of what they say, to be decorous in their utterances, to make sure that they tell the delegates what they can do when they are elected, and not to go and be insulting left, right, center, not to go and be telling untrue stories and stories that will bring divisions and fighting and insults into our party. I want Eastern Region to be calm, to be cool, to move with respect for each other during this campaign. So we are going to monitor. Constituency executives has been tasked to send people with the aspirants so that they can listen.
He has also been responding to questions about the disqualification of some aspirants.
There were petitions coming from the constituency that we saw evidence of it. He on radio inciting market women and people against our party. And he admitted it in the committee and apologized for it. We have evidence of a radio interview that insults left, right, center going on, and he admitted it and apologized. We had instances of text messages that it's so bad. Instances where we receive petitions where he has blatantly disregarded National Council directives that were given. All of it were brought to the committee, and he admitted it and apologized, asking us to, allow him because he's apologizing. But the committee found that he should have been referred to the disciplinary committee.
And that was the MPP regional chairman of the Eastern region, Jeffrey Kunedo, speaking there. Let's take you now to the northern region, where Chef Faliatu Razak has done over 108 hours since she embarked on a journey to break a world cooking record of 126 hours. For Chef Falyetu and a team, breaking the world record is a national assignment. Let's connect with the man on the ground, Christopher Marco, who has pitched camp at the Modern City Hotel. Christopher, good afternoon to you. I'm sure you've been having a lot of fun and having lots to eat from Chef Falye, but it's been 5 days already. How's the atmosphere there like?
Yes, so the atmosphere is a charged one. Lots of people continue to troop to the Modern City Hotel to be part of this historic event here in Tamale. A lot of them have also come all the way from the southern parts of the country. We talk about Accra, Koporizia, Sunyani, and other parts to be part of this process. Since the start of this event on January 1, the atmosphere here has been a packed one with a lot of people coming through to also let the whole world know that they are giving Faila the support. So the atmosphere has been massive as many people come to pass through.
Right, Chris, officially, how long has she done and how long does she intend to go?
So as it stands now, she has done some 108 hours. And the initial plan was for her to do 120 hours. But we understand that a Ugandan woman has done some 126 hours. So it means that she will have to do more. And if we are going by that, then it means that she will have to do that latest by Sunday to be able to equal that record. But according to the management of Faila, she's to do some 165 hours. So if we are going by that, then she will have to end somewhere Tuesday to be able to set a new record. And for the management, the reason she's going to do 165 hours is that they want her to set the record, and it should take a longer period before someone somewhere may even think of breaking that record.
And she has the capacity, she has the ability to go the full throttle, doesn't she?
Yeah, so looking at Faila, she looks even stronger than she started. Each passing moment, each passing day, she looks stronger. And for the health officials who have been attending to her, they keep saying that psychologically she's stable and physically she's okay to be able to go through this duration.
Chris, thank you so much. But before you take leave of us, Chris, what's on the menu today for Falye? Unfortunately, we lost Christopher Amwako there, a northern regional correspondent, updating us on the cookathon attempt by Chef Falyetu Razak in the northern region, specifically the hotel that this is happening, the Modern City Hotel. Before we go, let's bring you some international news. First, from Oscar Pistorius. Well, Paralympian Oscar Pistorius has been freed on parole from a South African jail nearly 11 years after murdering his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. Officials confirmed Pistorius was at home on Friday morning, having served half of his more than 13-year sentence. And now Ms. Steenkamp's mother said she accepted the decision to release the former athlete, but added her family was the one serving a life sentence. Pistorius, now 37, shot Ms. Steenkamp multiple times in 2013 through a door. The double amputee later claimed he had mistaken her for a burglar. Now, Pistorius was eventually convicted of murder in 2015 after an appeal court overturned an earlier verdict of culpable homicide. Still in international news, Senegal Supreme Court has rejected opposition leader Ousmane Sonko's appeal against a libel conviction, potentially ruling him out of next month's presidential election. Sonko is seen as a strong potential challenge in the race to succeed President Macky Sall, who is stepping down after 2 terms. Sonko has faced several court cases since 2021, all of which he has denied. Now, last month, a court ordered his reinstatement on the electoral roll. This has been seen as potentially paving the way for him to contest the poll after he had previously been barred following a conviction in a different case there. Now, this had been in May last year. The Court of Appeal sentenced Sonko to 6 months in prison for defaming Minister of Tourism. And after 12 hours of hearing, the Supreme Court earlier on Friday rejected Sonko's appeal against the libel conviction. But that's how we wrap up on the midday news on 3FM 92.7. There's more news on our website 3news.com. Business News is up next. My name is Noble Crosby Annan. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. It's time for Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. Coming up, Ghana's official creditors to discuss the restructuring of approximately $5.4 billion in loans on Monday, January 8th. We'll hear the possible outcomes from an economist.
I mean, having a definite date that the creditors are going to meet is a good signal. And once they meet, obviously, it gives a signal that we are fast approaching, an agreement.
And Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry laments the recent increase in cement prices, describing it as detrimental to ongoing projects.
Whilst we are thinking of how to find solutions to our problems of government-heavy indebtedness to contractors, this morning we are being slapped with another cement increase.
So my name is Michael Obodu. We'll bring you details of these stories and more shortly. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Straight into our top story now. International news agency Reuters has disclosed that Ghana's official creditors are poised to discuss the restructuring of approximately $5.4 billion in loans on Monday, January 8. This meeting holds considerable significance as it marks a crucial step towards securing the forthcoming tranche of funding from the International Monetary Fund. Meanwhile, Professor Lord Mensah has welcomed the announcement. This report has the rest of the story. Ghana previously faced challenges securing its IMF bailout second tranche last year, partly due to hurdles in obtaining consensus for debt restructuring from external creditors. However, with the imminent committee meeting, there's hope for progress in resolving this issue. The meeting's focus revolves around determining a cut-off date for debt restructuring, a pivotal obstacle in Ghana's fiscal course. Debates over the date, whether it should be December 2022 following Ghana's default or March 2020 tied to global COVID aid, remain unresolved. The Paris Club suggests December 2022, but creditors haven't reached a consensus. Economist Professor Lord Mensah expressed some optimism about these recent developments.
That's a good sign. I mean, having a definite date that the creditors are going to meet is a good signal. And once they meet, obviously, it gives a signal that we are fast approaching, an agreement, which, I mean, will definitely unlock the IMF money that we are desperately expecting in the country. So, from what I see, it's a good signal that we've gotten a definite date from official creditors.
However, he remains skeptical about Ghana securing anticipated debt cuts from its external creditors.
And the finance minister, I think, proposed between 30 to 40% cut on coupons, which for me was more or less overly ambitious. And I cannot be specific on the percentage, but I can tell you that the creditor may not go much, because especially when alternative use of funds are more profitable. As we speak now, the Fed's interest rates are a bit high. And so that's going to be a benchmark that these investors are going to look at, because, I mean, for foreign investment, they use the U.S. Fed's rate as more or less a risk-free benchmark.
Michael Lobodu, 3 Business, Accra. Now, meanwhile, economist Dr. Alex Ampabing has bemoaned the negative consequences the external debt restructuring is likely to have on the country's future dealings with its bilateral creditors. He has, however, urged the external creditors to reconsider their position and come to a conclusion to avert further contraction of Ghana's economy. Ghana previously faced challenges securing its IMF bailout second tranche last year, partly due to hurdles in obtaining consent.
There will be no choice than to come to consensus at some point. The challenge is that when you come out of this, it leaves a very strong implication for the future, as in how will the world, even if the market opens again for Ghana's bond, how would the world see Ghana's bond? How would other bilateral and multilateral institutions be willing to deal with Ghana going forward? I think that's a conversation probably might need for the future. But now the effort should more be centered on how do we move countries who are sitting on the table with the creditor committee. I know there's one, China and France have opted to co-chair. I just hope that very soon we'll come into consensus putting the interests of Ghana, because if the country goes bust, the money will be lost completely.
So you hear the economist Dr. Alex Ampabing speaking there. Away from that, the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry has voiced concern over the recent rise in cement prices, labeling it as detrimental to ongoing projects. Trades and Industry Minister Katie Hammond expressed worry regarding the decision of cement producers and importers to increase prices, citing the government's provision of a conducive operating environment for them. In an interview with We Business, the CEO of the Chamber, Emmanuel Cherry, emphasized that this escalation presents a significant setback, substantially inflating the operational costs for contractors across the country.
Whilst we are thinking of how to find solutions to our problems of government-heavy indebtedness to contractors, this morning we are being slapped with another cement increase in the market. 4 cedis per bag across board. That tells you that all contractors who will be going back to site to do their various works, either to complete or to continue their project works for government or other clients, automatically need to find additional 4 cedis per bag to end up boosting their capability or capacity in constructing those particular projects. That tells you that either the contractor will abandon site and go for renegotiation of the quantities in the bill, or the clients quickly will come to his aid and compensate the contractor with that price hike. If not so, if the contractor should go ahead with this particular project, automatically he's going to run a loss, because the prices of cement product in the market has gone up by 4 cedis per bag.
Emmanuel Cherry is the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry. Now, finally, the Acting Commissioner of the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA, Alhaji Idrisu Idisa Seidu, has charged customs officers to work ceaselessly at their various duty posts to meet or exceed their targets without compromise. The Acting Commissioner, Alhaji Seidu, made the call during a review of the annual awards parades for senior and junior officers at the Tema collection of the Customs Division in Tema of the Greater Accra region.
Whilst we are thinking of how to find solutions to our problems of government-heavy indebtedness to contractors, this morning we...
Because at the beginning of the year, the first budget that was read, GRA was given a revenue target of 106 billion to collect. Normally, our domestic tax division collects the majority of it, and we normally collect about 30%. And I always try to let people know that as a country develops, customs contribution to revenue go down, and they are mostly enforcement at the entry points. In the 80s, we used to collect 80%, and domestic tax was collecting 20%, but the reverse is now taking place. It shows the level of development of Ghana.
So you heard the voice of the Acting Commissioner of the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Jarahe Alhaji Idrissa Seidu, bringing an end to Business Daily. For more business stories, please check out our website 3news.com. I'm Michael Obodu. Thank you for listening. As always, please stay safe. Up next is Black Rasta, and he's on standby. Have a good day.